see. On this. All right, we are recording.
Welcome to Two Crazy Scoops Podcast with your hosts Ao and Antino, and once again, part 2 of Gabe's episode here, where we're going to talk about Nintendo, and that is all we're going to talk about. Nothing else this time.
So Atari started in.
So Gabe, before we start, I really slave over the titles of these episodes. Okay?
Yeah.
I mentally, I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to describe this. And I came up with one, which was No Quarters for You.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. I thought it was a great title.
A lot of people don't know what No Quarter is.
It's because they never played in the arcades. That's why. They probably thought it was like some medieval reference or something to quartering people. Who knows?
Yeah.
That, by the way, that reminds me. Someone did tell me, and I forgot who it was, but someone did tell me that they really liked the titles of the podcast, and I forgot who it was.
Yeah, you guys got clever titles.
I was sweating over that one. I was like, what can I got to come up with some kind of pun or something. I mean, this is Gabe's show.
So, yeah, you throw a pun in there, throw a taco joke. It'll fit with whatever I'm doing. There you go. Look at that. You got a shirt. Sweet.
For those who can't see it, Aaron is showing off his muscles. He's been working out a lot, apparently.
Yeah.
So this week is part 2 of the the video game episode with Gabe.
Yeah.
He's going to talk to us more about the history of video games. This one more focusing on Nintendo,
yeah. And I'm glad we're doing this one because I know you guys both have a little bit more experience with that. I think you were saying it, Antonio, with the Super Nintendo, right? Or in the GameCube, or what was it?
Yeah, the Nintendo 64 was my first console
64.
that I played a lot, and then the GameCube, the Wii, and that's kind of where I dropped off a little bit until I got the Switch and just reverted back to being a 12-year-old. So
yeah, exactly.
That's what we all do.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, where'd you guys want to start? Anything in particular? I guess we could start off with the Famicom.
Yeah.
Because if the Famicom was the first system that was in Japan, that was I think it was 83 or 84. So it was way before it even came to the States.
Mm-hmm.
The Nintendo system was the Famicom, and it was in Japan. And I mean, that's my dream. I want to get an original Famicom system and have Famicom games. The cassettes are a little different. I think most of them do work with the regular NES that we have here in the States. But
no, I don't know if they do. But I just remember I actually have. I think I have a mini one. You want me to get it?
Yeah, the mini ones. You have the Famicom Mini, from the Nintendo NES Mini.
I think so. Give me a second. Let me look.
Yeah, go get it.
Well, let me look and see.
So, it was a success in Japan for, a while, and Mario was already kind of pretty popular character, and the game was pretty popular. So they were trying to figure out how to make a profit here in the United States with it. And they were actually in talks with Atari. And that was Atari's biggest mistake, because had they continued on, they would have just carried through. They would have carried through the whole video game crash of 83. But they were in talks with them, and Nintendo really wanted to move, man. They wanted to move bad. And then Atari was kind of going back and forth, and they were saying they were having put a bunch of demands, because at that point they thought, oh well, we're kind of king in the United States. And so eventually Atari crashed, and so they lost that footing that they had. So then Nintendo was like, well, we're just going to do it ourselves. There you go. Look at that. Yeah, that's a Famicom.
And I apologize. I had thought about this earlier, but then I sat down here and completely forgot to actually bring it with me to the table.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Where'd you pick that up at?
So actually, my roommate actually picked this up. This is the Japanese version of the NES Classic that was released. So
very cool.
Looks. Very Famicom. Cool. Famicom, I think, was short for Family Computer.
Yep, that's it.
And the controllers were wired, and they were stuck to the actual system. So they modeled this one exactly right after it. Yep. And then I think the second controller had a little microphone on it. So only controller 2 had the microphone.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool. I didn't know that.
And I don't know but I don't think the American version fit. I don't remember how the cartridges look though, but I don't think they fit.
Yeah. Well, see, they went through a couple modifications because there was
That's the box.
There you go. The Famicom switched over from cartridges to like a mini disc system, and that was going to be the main way that they did it for a while, and then technology changed or something, and it ended up becoming cheaper to keep it as a cartridge.
Exactly. So that disc system, I don't think was ever released in the U.S., but in Japan it was, and it's funny because I saw this video on. There is a YouTube video where they compared, like for example, I think they took a game like Zelda, for example, and they compared the Famicom disc system in Japan to the NES version, and the Japanese version had a few more bells and whistles because it was running off the disc drive. Mm-hmm. And Antonio, the disc drive plugged into the bottom of this.
And discs, like, are you talking about like what I'm like CDs, what I'm familiar with, or is this a different kind of disc?
No, this is way before that.
That's what I was thinking. I mean,
I keep forgetting.
Yeah, they were small though. They were little things.
Well, they look like diskettes.
They weren't like a CD size, is what I'm saying. Like what Antonio's thinking of, they were smaller, but they was the same type of technology, and that's what they were thinking. Oh man, this is the way to go. It's cheaper. You can put more memory on there. But then I like I said, I don't remember. I remember hearing the podcast on it, but something changed with the technology, and they were able to keep the cartridges. Especially when they went over to the US, they didn't think that it was going to transfer over. I mean, they did so much research into how to sell the Nintendo over here, and they had different iterations of it. You know, they had like the CES convention, and they ran like 2 or 3 different models before they settled on what we know now as the NES, and that's what really took off. But anyways, it was just Atari missed their chance. They could have totally went right into the next generation of consoles. Had they, there you go. Had they just, continued to work, but they just didn't see the value. They thought they were the ones in the driver's seat. They thought they had all the power until they didn't.
And so, like this, we were talking about like the Mario game that you have in your background, that was on the NES?
Yeah. So this was on the Famicom. Mario was a huge hit in Japan like 2 years before the US even saw it. Uh-huh. And I mean, it was just a phenomenon. And so they knew that was the flagship game they wanted to bring over to the US. And of course it came with all of the Super Nintendos, or not the Super, the NESs. So that was the game that came, and it was really well liked.
Yeah, I would play that on a Game Boy Color that I had. Mm-hmm. And so just even though it was side scrolling like that, I felt like it was really entertaining to me. And there was other games I couldn't really handle because the graphics or something like that. But that one always I thought was really cool. But comparing that to what we had talked about last time, like with Pitfall or something like that.
Yeah.
This is like fast paced.
I'm really sorry. I didn't realize you were going to start talking. Anyway.
Yeah. What's interesting with Super Mario Brothers, they came out with the Super Mario Brothers 2 for the Famicom. But it was like way hard. Like it was like impossible levels. And so they brought it over to the US, and they had an American guy who was doing all the testing for them. And he was like, "Oh no, Americans aren't going to like this. It's like, it's too hard. They're not going to go for this." And so that's when they backtracked and they came out with the Super Mario 2, which if you remember, if you played that, it's an entirely different game. It's a whole different style. Do you know why it was different? Do you know what they ended up doing?
No.
Because it was so short. They had such a little time. They had already designed the Super Mario 2. To the US one, they took a game that was somewhat popular in Japan, and they converted it into a Mario game.
Oh.
It's a whole different. It was based off of some festival or some convention that they had over there. So it was like a very niche game.
Uh-huh. It was called Doki Doki Panic.
Doki Doki, that's it. Doki Doki Panic. And so all of those characters that you see in the Super Mario 2 were different characters. There were like they're like Arabian type characters. That's why if you look, there's a lot of kind of Arabian type symbolism in the game, And so, it's pretty. There you go. There's a nice image right there of what the Mario character, what it became, and what they were throwing, and all that. So they just incorporated a lot of the turtles they brought in.
Is Yoshi in this one?
No, not in this one.
Not in this one.
No, he wasn't until Super Nintendo to the Super Mario World. Yeah, but yeah, you can see the original cover there, and how he was kind of like I don't even know what you would call him.
They basically just swapped out the sprites.
Yeah,
each character, and it's funny because some of the characteristics of the characters that they swapped out, like for example, there's a girl in the original, she was swapped out for Peach, and this girl could float, and so that ability for Peach to float still stuck to today, even even in Smash, for example. And that's where it came from. So some of those moves stuck with those characters, or like Luigi's ability to jump pretty far.
Yeah. But it's totally different from, as far as like they were pulling vegetables out of the ground and throwing them, just the whole, the scrolling, how it went up to, and just the writing of the eggs when those things, shot out eggs, and that's how you'd catch them and throw them, and all that stuff was brand new. But Americans loved it. They knew nothing better. But how they kind of got out of it was, if you notice, if you ever beat the game, I don't know if either of you guys ever beat the game, it's Mario's dreaming.
Yeah.
He wakes up. So they kind of pass all that off as it was just his dream. And that's why Super Mario 3 is kind of more like the original Mario, because it's all, okay, now we're back to real life, but
like an abstract version of the game.
Yeah, it was like an abstract, kind of like a pull away, type thing. But it was fun. I liked it. I remember when it first came out, I didn't think nothing of it. I just thought they're trying something different,
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. I spent a lot of time on that one. But
yeah, it's not like today where you see like 500 YouTube videos as to why Mario doesn't look like the last game.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Some of those characters did kind of stick around. Like Shy Guy is one who came from Mario 2, and
the trying to remember thing. Yeah, the cactus thing was in Super Mario 3 too.
They took the cactus that stacked on top of each other, and they put it in some of the Mario games too. Yeah, the bomb. Yeah, they did keep some of the characters from it, but you never saw that style again.
No, or the main villain, the frog guy.
The frog,
he never appears again.
Yeah,
I don't know. Does he come in like any of the Smash games?
He as a trophy. He's a trophy. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so there's a lot of stuff they just kind of said, no, we're not doing that anymore, and then others they just pulled in. The Super Mario 3, that was my favorite game back then. I spent a lot of time with Super Mario 3. That was a fun game, man. That was well done. That was a well done follow up.
And this is the one. Let me see.
That's the one where it's very similar to the first Mario Brothers, but it's got It's like maps. You go to different things. That's where you can become like the raccoon Mario.
Yeah.
The frog Mario, and all that. And it was a lot of fun, man. I wasted a lot of time on that game.
So it's so funny because I had a pattern with that game where I got you grab the whistles, and then the wing with the P in it or the P on it that lets you. Sounds kind of weird, but the letter and it lets you fly through a whole stage, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense if you don't know.
I was gonna get you a shirt that has your face on it and says, "I don't mean it in a bad way." You say all the time.
I know. That tends to happen.
Anyways, continue.
But so you get 2 whistles because you have to warp to certain levels, and then I would always get one of the wings that had the letter P on it, and what that did is it let Mario fly through the entire level because normally in order to fly, he has to run for a little bit, get speed. He can fly a limited ways, and then he'll stop. And then I would get a cloud, which the cloud allows you to skip a level. So you'd have to play through the first 2 levels to get all the items you needed, and then you can warp right to World 8, which is the final level. And I had certain levels that I would either fly through, and there was one level I would skip, and it was like this battleship at the end. I would always skip that level with the cloud. And then
that one is the hardest part, though, isn't that?
It is. Yeah, it is. There's a battleship before you get to the castle. So right before you get to the castle, there's this battleship, and I would always use the cloud icon, the little cloud item, and just skip it, go straight to the castle. Anyway, that just brings back.
He's just basically saying he's a cheater.
Yeah, just let it be known
that. Hey, it was in the game. No, but it was in the game. I just use game,
Oh, right. But when I do it playing video games, I'm cheap.
Of course. Exactly. It depends on the circumstances and whether it benefits me personally.
Oh, okay.
But, getting back to the original system, do you guys ever play with the robot?
Rob, yes.
Yeah.
So I didn't have the Rob, but I remember a friend of mine did have it. But
I had it.
The version we had was just a regular system. So.
Yeah, and that's what ended up most being. It was funny. The Rob was initially designed. It was going to have a whole bunch of games, but they only designed 2 games for it. It was Gyromite, which is the one that it came with, and then Stack Up, which was kind of like a weird game. It was like a bunch of games in it, and it was like a puzzle, and you had to move the thing. And so what this thing would do, Antonio, was a little robot, and he would grab these little. Well, with the Gyromite, it was like these little what are those called? Those spinny things, like gyroscope kind of things, and it had a spinner on it. So you drop it in there, and this thing would spin it, and then the robot would pick it up and drop it on these like little like holders. And when the weight of the spinner went on it, it would push a button on the second controller, and that would operate the game. And it was really complicated. Oh. It was like really, really complicated. But the concept of having a robot was so cool that's what kind of got a Nintendo into people's homes. And then they'd play it a few times, and then Rob would go in the closet, and they continued playing it. And that was actually their plan. They knew by the market research that Rob wasn't going to be a lasting thing. But they knew that kids, because it was a robot, they wanted a robot, they'd buy it.
So this is like a physical.
It's a physical robot. Yeah, it's really cool. It's just this little guy, and he's got eyes, those infrared eyes, and he would react to whatever happened on the screen. So like there would be a flash on the screen, and it would tell the robot what to do, and so you could control the robot. So the Gyromite was like this guy, and he would go, and there was these pipes that were up, and so if it was a blue pipe, you had to move a gyro on the blue button, and it would drop, and then the pipe would go, and then he was able to cross over to, get there. He liked to get radishes too, and there was these little guys out to get them, and you could smash them if you timed it right. And it was really hard. It was a really hard game. I bought the whole system. I saved up for it.
Hey, Antonio, just FYI, he's talking about Rob and Smash.
Yeah, the robot.
And those little spinner things that he has in the game, that's exactly where those came from.
Oh, okay. I'm still going to have to look up a video of this, because I did that last time after we were done, and I posted a lot of them on Instagram because I was like, whoa, like I'm still having a hard time picturing all of this, but it's something that's interesting for me when I research it to kind of understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was cool as a concept. It was not to play. It was hard. So it was one of those things that you'd play it for 5-10 minutes, and then you were kind of done. Let's see what other games we had, But then of course the other came with the gun, with the what did they call it? I forget what
Duck Hunt. Duck Hunt.
Yeah, well, I knew Duck Hunt, but the name of the gun they had
the light gun.
Yeah, I forget the name of it now, but Duck Hunt was, man, that was another game we spent a lot of hours on. That was fun, and even my mom would get into it because just pulling the trigger on it. And yeah, we would play. That was brilliant. You need to get your tacos there. Yeah. So yeah, it was brilliant because now the whole family could play. I think even with the Nintendo, going from the Atari to the Nintendo, there was a few extra buttons, and even that was a little hard for some people to grasp, especially like parents. And so introducing the gun was great, because then it was just you point and pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And
more user friendly for
way user friendly. Yeah, and it was just a lot of fun, and it was just one of those things that the family actually could kind of gather around. So the robot combined with Super Mario combined with Duck Hunt was just a brilliant marketing ploy, because it just kind of encompassed everything. It was like the new technology of the robot that attracted the young kids. The adventure of Super Mario Brothers, which they already knew was a hit in Japan, and so they just needed to get it into American hands. And then you had an easy game like Duck Hunt, where anybody could play it, and so it just really took off after that. I can remember This was actually a story that I wanted to tell you from back then. So I wanted this game so bad, and I was already very entrepreneurially minded when I was a kid, and I knew my parents couldn't get it. It was very expensive. But when I talked to my dad, I had some money that I had got from chores or from an allowance or whatever, and I asked my dad to buy a pack of saladitos and to buy lemons and apples and oranges. And I had this huge pickle jar that we had, and I made tons of these saladitos and, with lemon, oranges and everything in it. And I sold it at school. And that's how I earned my money to buy my Nintendo.
Oh, wow.
I sold that much saladitos to kids I was like the dealer. I was on the playground with a pocket full of these bags of saladitos in it and juicy. And so I was sitting there, hey, you guys want some saladitos? Yeah. It was like 50 cents a pack. And so I sold a ton of these. So then I'd make the money back easy because it was like, $5 for a big old bag. And then I had $20. So then I'd buy another bag for my dad. We'd make some more. I just kept doing that until I had the money to buy I bought the whole, deluxe system with Rob, with the gun, with everything. And so I was like, all my neighbors, they came over to play. I mean, it was just like really cool.
Hey, where'd you buy your system from? I'm just curious. Do you still remember?
Kmart. I think
Kmart. Okay.
The Kmart right there. There used to be a Kmart on Valencia and I-19. It's like a school now, but that used to be a Kmart a long time ago. And it's like a charter school. It's all kind of run down, but back in I think pretty sure that's where I got it. Was from that
yeah,
Kmart.
it's like it's on the northeast corner, right?
Northeast corner. Yeah.
I can picture what you're saying. I used to drive by there a lot.
Yeah, so I that's where I got it, and then so it was just a lot. It was a lot of fun, but with the games were expensive, just like with the Atari. And so what we did in our neighborhood, I formed a Nintendo club, and I made all my neighbor kids join. So what we did is every time we got together, we'd pay like $1 and we put it in this jar. And then after we had enough to buy a game, we'd go buy a game. And then, we'd vote on what game we were going to buy. And then we'd all come back and play. And it was just like kind of the Nintendo club's game. It didn't belong to any specific person. But that only lasted so long because then people stopped paying their dues. They just wanted to come over and play Nintendo for free. So I had to become like this, this bookie. Hey, where's your $1? Can't play today without your $1. Come on. I still have people owe me dollars from Nintendo Club who haven't paid me. I got cousins who are still like, oh man, I'll get you that $1 soon, man. I'll get you that $1. Hey, now I was militant, man. I was serious about my Nintendo Club, man.
Dude, now's the time to catch up with them and get your money now.
They're all in lockdown.
With interest, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. You see $1 from 1987 with interest today. Dude, I'll call them up and charge them. Sorry, go ahead.
From that picture that you sent me it was like an ad.
Oh yeah.
It's like $300 back then still.
Yeah.
That's like, that was crazy to me. Even when I saw it, I was like, $300 today is a lot. But back then, I mean.
Yeah, and VCRs were selling for like $800 back then. I mean, you only the rich people had that stuff, It was crazy. But, again, we're comparing it to today's technology, and so much of the efficiency in manufacturing has changed where a lot of that stuff, it gets cheap really fast. Back then, man, I mean, those prices lasted for a long time. I mean, it was up there until the next thing came, and then some of the prices for the older models would go down. But it was but we paid it. I mean, if that was our entertainment. So.
Well, I mean, we still pay it today. But.
We still paid it, But I mean, you consider like a parent's point of view, they could keep shelling out quarters every week to go play video games at the arcade. Or they can do a one-time payment, and then they've got a game system that their kids can enjoy for a long time.
Yeah.
So it was kind of it was a trade-off. There was good and bad portions for it.
Yeah, even though I didn't have too much history with that, I did enjoy playing Duck Hunt. I only played it like a couple times at a friend's house, and like I couldn't find anyone else who had it. I felt like I dreamed playing it until like later on, because like even though the Nintendo 64 was cool, there was nothing that was interactive like that.
Right.
And that's the point that I liked about it. I wish they would have done more with that. And then the Wii came out, but it wasn't.
Yeah,
it still wasn't the same.
it's not the same. Yeah, and you know, they tried. I mean, it's there's some benefits to it, but yeah, like you said, the interactivity of it was something that was really you know, pretty innovative at that time. You know, that you could point in the TV Reddit. You know.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. But what other games did you play, Aaron?
So the first Metroid was one of my favorites.
Metroid.
They introduced a lot of cool concepts with the original Metroid game.
Did you beat the game?
After I was grown, not as a kid.
Okay, after you're grown. But did you know this? Did you find the secret out as a kid?
Justin Bailey with the lines under it.
No, about Samus being a girl.
Oh,
yeah,
well,
like her suit explodes.
See, you guys all take that for granted. When that happened, I beat the game. I was the first in my family to beat the game. We're like, what? I was playing a girl this whole time. It was like, whoa, you know. And yeah, that was like, it was huge reveal, man. You know, plot twist.
Well, the only time you saw that though was when you had to beat it within a certain time.
Within a certain time frame, right?
So if you just beat the game and it took forever, I don't even know if you found out. I can't remember. But I know if you beat it within a certain time, like there's three different endings. There's like a one ending where she just says congratulations or whatever. But I don't think she takes anything off them. And then there's one ending where she takes her helmet off.
Yeah.
So you can still see her hair and see that it's a girl. And then there's another ending where she takes off her armor.
Right.
And she just has her regular suit on.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you can see. So you only get the regular suit ending if you beat it. I think it was like 3 hours or something like that.
So these games I played all on like the Game Boy. So I did also.
They had different versions though. The Game Boy versions weren't the same as the NES versions.
Oh, okay.
They were similar. They had a lot of similar gameplay, but they weren't exactly the same. You know, they were, and I mean, it makes sense. You don't want to play a game that you've already beaten on the NES on the Game Boy. You want to have a different adventure. You know, if you're gonna spend money on a whole new, cartridge and game system. But yeah, it was similar. I mean, I think the Game Boy did keep true to pretty much to the NES, you know, as far as the way it interacted and the way the games, you know, when you had a brand on it transferred over to the Game Boy, it was pretty much a similar way. You know, the gameplay was very similar. They didn't change too much, which I appreciated, you know, that they didn't go too crazy on that. But with Metroid, I think it was like the first game that I played where it was like you explored, you know, because I'm trying to remember, I can't remember if Metroid came out first or if Legend of Zelda came out first. One of those two, but I played Metroid before Zelda, you know, so that's probably Metroid probably came out first. But you controlled, you know, with like Super Mario, you went in one direction, right? You went in one direction, you reached the goal, then you went on to the next, and that was it. With Metroid, you can kind of go back and forth, and if you can go down dead ends, you could, you know, go to levels ahead before you really were ready to, you know, before you had the equipment or the weapons necessary to beat that level, you know. And so it was kind of like the first thing where you went without clues, without guidance, you know. So that was really, I think that was kind of mind-blowing for my little 8-year-old 9-year-old mind, you know, to be able to have that freedom to travel that way, you know.
You know what? The first Zelda and Metroid, they both came out in 1986. I'm trying to find the month. Oh no, Zelda was released in February of '86, and Metroid was released in August.
Okay.
So
I know for me, I played Metroid first before Zelda, because Zelda was kind of, I got into Zelda too because that was kind of the same feeling, you know, of, oh, I can travel this whole map, you know, and go to these different areas, and then, you know, get wiped out because you didn't have enough hearts, you know, or you didn't have enough, your sword wasn't strong enough, and then you go back to it and you're like, oh, now I'm ready to do this, you know. So that was always really cool. You know, and then, you know, of course, the coolest thing was bombing the wall, and there's a secret tunnel there, you know, and you go in and you get coins or you know, whatever bonus things you got. So, you know, just that kind of like that sense of, hey, there's something hidden, you know. Both Metroid and Zelda had that, where you're bombing everything because you don't know where the secret passage is, or like in Metroid 2, you get to a wall and it looked like that was the end, and you kind of, turn into a ball and hop around, and then you'd find this hidden little passage to go through that. That was just really cool because it just opened up your imagination to kind of look outside the box. And I really think that a lot of that type of gaming, it primes you for thinking outside the box, quote unquote, in life, where you're like, okay, I'm not just stopped here. And I think I credit that to a lot of my thinking, just not stopping at because something says stop, in business and in other things too, where now you're looking for what else. And I mean, we for all the bad stuff that we can say about, gaming and what it can do to brains, it does make you a thinker. They do make you really plan and strategize, and I think that's something that adds value to everyday life.
I think for Metroid, I just the same thing. I roll up into a ball and jump into a wall and see if there's a way out.
Right, exactly.
No, I'm just kidding.
I wish my mom could have heard you say that 30 years ago.
I know.
30, yeah.
You guys are good,
I'm
Mom.
sure I told my mom that.
You think
and she didn't believe
outside
me
the
back then.
box. I wish that would have flew.
Yeah, I like what you're talking about with those games because it adds like a new adventure aspect to it where not everything's just scroll to the right.
Right.
The answers are somewhere else hidden and you got to find it, and it's frustrating, but that frustration is a lot more rewarding when you figure out exactly. What direction you're supposed to be going.
And that's why I hate like walkthroughs. I think they're fine as long as you beat a game normally first. If you beat it the hard way first, then if you want to go back and play it again with a walkthrough, and then at the end I think you should. But if you have a walkthrough from the beginning, that defeats all the purpose and any lessons that you learn or any, so like you said, the satisfaction you get of beating it from the beginning, it's just all gone,
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's Nintendo was the first system to really be able to do that. Like the Atari games and television games, they were standard arcade games. They didn't really have that depth of playability. Probably the closest that came to that was Pitfall. Like I had mentioned, but even that was a scroller, and it was just basically a maze, is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But with Nintendo, you got the depth of the story. I can remember beating Zelda and like almost wanting to cry because of how hard I had worked to get that. And then you find out it's another level after, like, no.
You know what? It's funny. Part of it too, though, was design. They were learning how to design those games too, so it was experimenting on their part. Because I actually went back with my roommate and played the first Zelda for the first time, like all the way through. Because as a kid, I never beat it.
Right.
But I played it through, and I had like the walkthrough, and I was actually telling him what to do. And absolutely. I cheated because I had limited time. But here's what's funny about it. That game was so difficult. Without the walkthrough, there's no way you could possibly have figured some of that stuff out. There were vague hints for some of it. You
couldn't figure out the hidden stuff. But you could beat it. I mean, I beat it without the walkthrough,
But it was very difficult.
Oh yeah, it was hard. It was
extremely
very hard.
difficult. I'm like,
that's
how would you have known to burn this random bush in the field somewhere, and it's going to open up a door somewhere? It's like, how would you know that?
Yeah, so and it's just random burning, And that's why when you got the blue candle, you're all happy because like, wow, I can just burn everything, It's like a flamethrower. And that's the only time you could find that stuff,
I was just like, this is ridiculous.
But and a lot of that too was the coin mining, right? That's where we learned how to coin mine. And that carried on to a lot of other games of where you would just go to an area, not because you had anything to do there, other than there was characters that had big coins, or high value coins. So you just stay there the whole day. I mean, I would spend an hour just killing the bad guys to get the coins to be able to buy the prizes, and that's of course because I didn't know some of these caves that had these, all these coins that were high value. So again, that teaches you, oh, this is worth something. I have to work for it. I worked an hour literally to earn enough money to buy this thing that will now help me to have more enjoyment out of this game. That's another concept that you gain from these games, that was built in. That's work, right? And we learn work. You learn to do something that's not exactly enjoyable, that's not fun, but it serves a purpose. And once that purpose is achieved, well, now you see value in doing that, and you go on. So yeah, it was just it was pretty. It was just very beneficial for me, anyways. I was older brother. I was firstborn, so it kind of fed into that already mentality of, okay, need to be responsible. I need to accomplish this and this and this, and it just fed into that and just kind of helped support that later in life. It just really kind of carried over those types of lessons.
Mm-hmm.
So the other game, Mike Tyson's Punch Out. Did you guys ever play that?
That's exactly what I was going to say next. Punch Out.
Mike Tyson's Punch Out. Did you play Mike Tyson's or did you play the regular
Mike Tyson's?
Okay.
Yeah, Mike Tyson's.
That's the original one. So go ahead.
No. Yeah. So Mike Tyson was in the original game.
Yeah.
And that one was easier because you could once you figured out everyone's pattern, then you could go through it. And my brother actually beat it, but I would watch him as we play it. And each time we get further and further. But I still remember some of the characters from that game, like Mr. Sandman and King Hipple. I think the first person was Joe Glass. I think that was his name.
Joe Glass was easy, yeah.
Yeah, super easy to beat him.
Don Flamenco.
Don Flamenco.
Bald Bull. The tiger guy, what was his name?
Oh yeah, that's right. There was a tiger guy.
I can't remember what his name was, but yeah, they were all. So the last few of them were hard. The what was his name? Was it Mr. Incredible? He was the one before Mike Tyson. No, I think that's the guy who replaced Mike Tyson.
No, Mr. Dream.
Mr. Dream was one. All right, so I think it was
Mike Tyson.
What was the guy before him? He did that. Oh no, it was man, I can't remember my characters now.
You can
the last two or three were really hard, and Mike Tyson was impossible. I mean, he was such a hard. I remember when I beat him finally. It was like I felt like Rocky. I wanted to go run some steps. And I had friends and my brothers are there, and they're all cheering and jumping. We had a few in our neighborhood who beat Mike Tyson. But that was a hard match because one punch and you're down.
Yeah.
You have to do it perfect. You can't get hit once.
I remember when the first time we beat it, we didn't actually knock him out. I think what happened was, you get to the end of the third round or however many rounds.
Yeah, it's
TKO. And then they just choose the person who won.
Yeah.
And so
So I beat him twice. I beat him with TKO and I beat him with a knockout. Yeah, that was hard. I tried playing it recently, and it's just you got to have a 10-year-old's ability,
reflexes
because it's really, really hard. It's
brutal. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's just funny as a kid playing video games like that though, and your heart rate just skyrockets, and you don't know how to lower it, and so you're just there having a panic attack because this video. That's how I'd be like, oh come on, and you lose, you're like, no.
I was always pretty chill, but my brothers threw some controllers. My brothers threw some controllers at the TV. Oh, there you go. There's some pictures.
Some of the classes. This doesn't have their names, but yeah, these are some of the characters, though, for sure.
That's funny because all the pictures, they're you guys are right in front of them on my screen.
We're right in front of the pictures?
Yeah, so every time you click on one, it just goes right behind.
Okay,
sorry.
Let me see if I can move this here.
Piston Honda, that's right. Piston Honda.
He did what in his Honda? That's a joke from Cars the movie, so I can say that.
That is a Cars joke, yes. What? Did you want a cup?
And I didn't, it's so funny. I barely played the one on the Wii because they released it on Wii too.
Right.
They redid it, but I didn't play that one. I mean, I played it, but I never bought it. I feel like they're due for another Punch Out game.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. They had one where they released the original arcade version. Because did you ever play the original arcade of Punch Out? That's where it's you're like a 3D image, and you see through yourself as you're fighting the characters.
Yeah. So I never played it at that time, but I saw a video of it later. So that's where that that green. Yeah, that's where that green. So in Smash Brothers, his green version with just the frame.
Yeah,
that's where that came from.
Mm-hmm.
From that, what
that was
Gabe's
a hard
talking
one,
about.
man. I played in the arcade too. I never beat that in the arcade. But that was really hard. The Nintendo one was a lot better. It was a lot easier, at least through the first, 6 or 7 levels. But yeah, that was fun. So the other one that I had a lot of fun with was, did you play Ninja Gaiden?
Yeah,
that was hard. That was a fun game, but that was hard.
You know how I beat that? It was with the and again you're gonna say
a whistle with the P on it, and you just
yes, the P wing and the whistle. Okay, wait. So there's 2 things I want to say. Number one, just jumping back to the system real quickly. One of the differences that Nintendo did from Atari was they actually had a quality control in place. And each publisher could only release a limited number of games. And I don't remember what the number was. I may have been 5 or something per year. So what you would get is a lot of companies create additional names for themselves to release games under different. So you had that with Contra, I think like Konami, companies like that, they kind of did that so that they can release more games. Because Nintendo had a strict quality control. They didn't want it to crash like with Atari. But after the NES was out for a while, there was this device, Gabe, that I know you're familiar with called the Game Genie.
Yeah, I never used a Game Genie.
Game Genie. Well, we actually rented it from Blockbuster.
Sacrilege.
Yeah, we rented it from Blockbuster, and what it was is it was this cartridge that you plug the cartridge into, and then you plug the whole thing into the system, and then it came with a little booklet, and the booklet had all these cheats in it, so you can have unlimited lives or infinite jumping ability and all this other stuff.
I will admit one thing. I did do the up, down, left, right, BA start on all the Konami games to get the 30 lives. I did that on Contra, on Life Force. I'm trying to remember some of the other ones that it worked on. But yeah, so you would do that, Antonio. I don't know if you ever seen that up, down, left, right, BA start. But it's like the code. You do that, punch it in, and then you hit start. Code. And then you'd all of a sudden you'd have 30 lives.
Oh.
But you kind of needed it on
Contra. You need it for Contra, yeah, exactly.
It was hard. Yeah, you couldn't beat it without it. But I did cheat. I did cheat on that. I did allow myself that cheat.
I actually just got Contra.
That's on the record now, so. Like Eric has like a whole.
But Contra was really interesting too, because it was the first to kind of have that forward scrolling motion, where you got to it was going sideways, and then you enter into this complex, and then you were like going forward, and so you would shoot up at the the bad guys or the little computer things to blow them up, and then when you got to the bad guy, to whatever the villain of that level was, they were in front of you, so you had to run back and forth and jump and do it. So that was kind of an innovative thing too. I mean, it was a little clunky. It was a little hard to read, but, it was different. It definitely was something that was kind of, they were trying stuff, at that time.
It was almost like a pseudo 3D sort of like, to try to give that effect, which they actually built upon that for the Super Nintendo.
Exactly. Yeah. Super Nintendo did a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Nintendo was a little limited on it. But it was a try, it was a start for that.
And then I think their biggest competition during that time was eventually the Master System, which was a little bit more powerful than the NES, but that kind of goes into Super Nintendo territory almost. But at the time, they were basically the king of video games during that time.
Yeah. Well, Sega pushed Nintendo to go to the Super Nintendo because Sega was the first 16-bit system, and so you have Nintendo, which was 8-bit. But the problem with Sega was that they just weren't as popular. The games that they had were not well-known games. They had Altered Beast, which at the time was kind of popular in the arcades, but it was still kind of fringe because it was basically, Antonio, was these guys, you would turn into these animals. So you'd be a guy, and then you would magically turn into these animals, and you would attack things. You'd gain these powers to be able to pass the level. And I mean, I wasn't allowed to play it. My parents would let me play it. So I think it was a little more, like you got Super Mario, which is cutesy, and you got mushrooms, and you got colorful, and it was kind of dark, So like Sega's answer was Sonic, which was fun, but Sonic was hard to play. I mean, you had to really kind of know it. Sega also introduced extra buttons, so there was instead of the 2 buttons, it was 3 buttons, which again, it seems like not a big deal now because all of the new systems have 1 million buttons on them. But back then, that's like another button that you have to think about,
Mm-hmm.
And so it was almost like they went too far. They went a little bit too advanced before they were ready, before people were ready. Mm-hmm. So that gave Nintendo the chance to develop the Super Nintendo, and they caught up to Sega pretty quick after. Then it was just back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And it just was kind of continual war, and then eventually Sega just fell to the wayside.
Yeah.
But even Nintendo, I mean, once you got the PlayStation and you got the Xbox coming in, Nintendo has struggled since. I mean, the Switch is pretty cool. The Switch has held its own, but they've always just held their own since. They've never really been a leader after that.
It depends on what you measure leader by, because if you go by the number of systems sold, you could probably say that. But then the Wii outsold the Xbox 360 and the PS3. Yeah. So from console sales, they definitely outsold them.
Yeah, and Well, with Wii
was
though,
a flop.
See, Wii U was terrible. But they were smart in that they didn't go after the Xbox and PlayStation crowd.
Right.
Families, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The families were getting left in the dust with these complicated and violent games.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the Wii was smart in that they're like, okay, well, you know what? We're going to stick with this. This is what we kind of came up with, this family, entertainment system. And so they had a niche, and it was a big niche. I mean, it probably couldn't be called a niche because, like you said, they did outsell everything. And I mean, we still have one. We still use it. My daughter likes the Wii,
Yeah.
And we were playing Mario Kart just the other night, on our Wii.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it still holds, because it's I don't want my daughter playing games that are violent, right? So she's still young. She likes the colors. She likes the easy concepts. So it fits a niche still, And so that was real smart on their part.
Not trying to jump too far away into the future with you guys, but when Wii Sports came out, a lot of people that I knew were playing it, older and younger, and it was kind of like easy to do, and people could still beat you even though you were a kid, which was kind of foreign because I was used to beating all the older people. So everyone's making fun of me because I'm losing Wii Tennis, and
Well, I just, because of the quarantine, we pulled out the Wii Fit, the mat.
Oh yeah,
that's where my daughter, because I was paying my daughter $2 a mile to run with me, and she was like, it's too hot, and then we had the smoke, because of the fires, and I'm like, well, we gotta, I'm not gonna have a kid who can't, gets out of breath just walking a mile. So we pulled out. She loves it. She loves it. She's got all kinds of different characters on it, and she keeps track every time she works out. It keeps a monitor of what her progress is. So I mean, it still holds up, and it's still really, it's fun for her, and it's exercise, it gets her moving even though she can't be outside.
Yeah.
They actually have a game for Switch called the Ring Fit Adventure, which has been sold out since March probably. It came out late last fall, but similar concept to that. But kind of going back a little.
Gabe's paying $2 a mile, so you gotta,
exactly right.
We'll go with you, man.
We're ready. But kind of stepping back a little bit to NES times. Do you remember the running pad, the track and field game with the running pad?
Yep. That was fun. That was fun with the track and field. Yep.
So that was kind of like a precursor to some of these other things that we're talking about, like the Wii Sports and stuff.
So I'm glad you brought that up because Nintendo, they didn't shy away from innovation, So you had the pad, right? And you could do different. There wasn't really too many games with the pad, but there was the track and field was the best one, I think.
Yeah.
But again, they had the Power Glove. And let me tell you, the Power Glove was so fun. It is a tragedy that they only came out with like 4 or 5 games for it. That's it. And that was an item that was way before its time. It was just so cool because it was for the like what you had mentioned, Antonio, with the interactivity with the gun. Mm-hmm. It was with the glove. You move your hand and the cursor would move on it. And they had this game. It was like it was like a handball game. I forget what the name of it was, but it was so fun, you know. And then you could play regular games with it too. It had a pad on there that if you needed to use it, you know, you could. But you could control the character with it. Those weren't as fun because they weren't made for the glove; they were made for the controller. But the concept was just so advanced. I mean, it's just a shame that it didn't take off. You know, it only lasted just a couple years, and like I said, there was only about 4 or 5 games that were made for it. But a friend of mine, I never had the glove. A friend of mine had it, and he had like 2 games. And I mean, we spent a lot of time on it. Oh, look at that 177, man! Wow,
hit on it.
Oh, that's for the
looking
Famicom. Yeah,
I was actually looking for one of these because I have like this. You can't really see it right now, but I have a setup where I have the NES Blaster in one of these glass boxes, and then I was gonna put the Power Glove, but I just haven't found a decent price one. But
yeah,
it's not too
expensive.
Bad. Yeah, but
everybody walks in and wonders why Aaron has guns in his living room, though.
Right, exactly. If you're not a game fan, well, I actually don't care for it. It was my roommate's idea. I don't actually care for it, but since we got it, I'm like, well, you might as well get a Power Glove to go up there. So we
yeah.
Like, what is Aaron planning on doing?
Right, exactly. But this
is gonna rob someone from the 80s.
Yeah. Right. And this is that power pad. I can't remember if you saw one or not before, Antonio.
I haven't. I've seen the glove, but that's just because I would buy like old comic books at Bookman's whenever I was bored during the summer and just like read them, and they'd have ads in them from back then. There's all this like weird technology.
Oh man, I forgot about that game. Yeah, the Short Order and Explode. Yeah, I played that. Those are fun. Those were with the power pad.
You actually step on those?
Yeah, well, I forget how you even played it. I mean, it was so long ago. But it was always a competition. You're always playing against somebody, and so I really don't remember them, but I just remember the cover.
And this is that track game.
That's the track and field. The track and field was fun. Yeah.
So you would literally stand on the actual pad, and let me see if I can pull that up. So yeah, you would stand on, like, for example, one person would stand on 1 and 2. Other people could stand on 5 and 6, 9 and 10. Like, you can actually have teams and compete with each other. And it would pick up every time you stepped on it, it would pick up, you know, and your character would run faster. So yeah, I remember us playing this, and it was a lot of fun, like running on that gamepad.
Okay, go back up. So I had the Advantage joystick. So that was really cool too. I was glad they had a whole bunch of different joysticks. So I have 2 of them now, actually. But what was cool about it is you could have you push that top button, and it would continually, like if you were in a shooting game, you could adjust the knob to where it was like, so you like had an automatic weapon. So like some of the like 1942 or other games where you would have to go, you know, have to push the button to shoot every time. If you wanted, you could, you know, control that. But what I liked it for especially was with the arcade style controller. So that was really cool for like Burger Time and arcade games that you're used to playing with a joystick like that. So that was cool. I have, like I said, I have a couple of those, and they're fun. Then there was another similar joystick. What was that one called? I had one of those too, but I don't have one anymore.
And this is for the Super Nintendo?
This is all NES.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'm telling you, they had all these different you know, just peripherals that you could get for it. It was
I remember the Advantage. I didn't have one, but I do remember it.
Yeah. Oh, I know what it was, and actually, I know I do have it. It's a controller similar to the regular NES pad, but it's more curved, and it's formed to your hands better.
Oh, it looks like an SNES controller. That one?
No, it didn't look like an SNES. It was a little different. I don't see it on here though, but it was just like a little, excuse me, just a little more ergonomic, you know, and it was kind of fun. It was kind of fun to play, but. I like the Advantage better. I thought the Advantage was. When I was a kid and we had one, I always took it. I was like, "It's my Advantage. I get to take it."
Was it like this?
Fight over it. Yes, that's it. That's the
NES
one.
Max.
The Max. Yeah. I have one of those. Yeah. I feel like there was another one that was like a joystick, but I could just be confusing systems.
Yeah, I remember that one.
And so what years are we talking about with the Nintendo, the NES?
So, well, Nintendo came into the US at 85, I believe. And already came with like 20 games or something that, were already big with Japan. And then it just grew. It grew after that. I could be wrong. Do you have any? Yeah, so because it was like 83, I think 82, 83 was when the Famicom was in Japan, and it took them a few years to get over to the US. Mm-hmm. So they kind of shipped over all their hits that they knew the people liked. So that was also kind of an advantage, that NES had with other new systems. They obviously had to kind of develop as they went. They brought a system with already proven games that worked,
mm-hmm.
that were fan favorites,
and like a huge test audience.
Huge test, yeah, years of test audience, data that they could just bring over.
Mm-hmm. And just to throw in too, real quickly, the during that time they were developing that disc system that attaches to the bottom of the Famicom.
Yeah,
and by time some of those games that come over, the technology for the cartridges had kind of came down a little bit. So the storage that the disc could have, you can almost get the same size on cartridges because the prices that come down.
Yeah.
Plus, you had the backup batteries as well, which allowed them to save, because that was one of the advantages of the disc, you could save right on the disc.
Yeah.
Whereas with the cartridge, you had to use this password system that was very complicated. But then once they added the battery to it, you could just save your progress to the cartridge, and so that kind of negated the need for the disc. And again, another reason why I didn't come over to the States, because you had a little bit of a gap between the releases.
And they were also concerned too with the Americans had been used to Atari and Television, Coleco. Those were cartridges. They were afraid if they varied too much from what Americans knew, that it would be they wouldn't like. In fact, the reason why the Nintendo has the top loading where it drops down is because the VCRs at the time, I don't know if you remember, they used to go in at the top and you'd shut them down.
Oh. Horrible decision. And it was a design flaw.
Oh, horrible. Totally. Yeah. I mean, that's where you get the whole blowing into the cartridge thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where it started from. So that's why they did it, is because they wanted to imitate a thing that Americans liked. They liked their VCRs, and this was something that they could kind of compare with.
Associate it with, yeah.
Be associated with it, yeah.
But
yeah, like
really
you said, it was terrible design, yeah.
Yeah. So that mechanism where you put the NES game in and then you push down, the process of pushing down, which is how it was supposed to be used, what it would do is it would bend the pins in the system over time. So every NES eventually would get that flashing red light, and you had to keep reseating it, putting the game back in. Now we used to
little slightly sideways, or you put like a little piece of paper in there to keep it down a little more. Yeah, just all these tricks that kids came up with.
Blow into the cartridges, but the blowing into the cartridges didn't actually do anything.
That's what I was gonna ask.
No, it was just the.
It felt like it did.
I did that with the Nintendo 64. We'd be like.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
You're like, no, I'm going to do it. I blow hard.
It comes from the idea of like, there's not a connection being made. It must be dirty or something. So let me blow into it and clear it out, and that way you'll have a good connection.
Well, they did sell these kits where you could clean the cartridges, because, I mean, yes, a dirty contact would affect it, but 9.5 times out of 10, it was just the fact that eventually the system would bend. And that's why Nintendo, when they redesigned it, they created a top loader. Right. And the Japanese version was a top loader, and then the redesigned NES, which I think I can pull up a picture of it, but when they redesigned it, they just had it top loading, and that eliminated a lot of the issues that they had. Much, yeah, and
I mean, because even now, I mean, when I get old cartridges, I have to clean them. I have to clean the pins on the cartridge. So you just take some alcohol and a swab and you just clean it. And then then you got to try to make it fit. And unfortunately, mine, the one of them that I have has a new pins on the actual system done. So as long as the cartridge is clean, pretty much it'll work. But then I have an old school one that's it's original, everything. That's always kind of touch and go on it. But
this is the original. This is the redesign of the NES. And that came out after the Super Nintendo did. They redesigned it.
So you guys are going to go on record saying that blowing on it doesn't help.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Man.
As much as I wish it did, because I spent
kids,
a lot of breath on cartridges.
Yeah, as kids, you didn't know that. That's what everyone did, so you just did it.
Well,
and eventually it would work.
Oh, and then the one kid who, no, I know how to do it.
Yeah.
And then it worked for him. Like, wow, I guess he knows how to do it.
Right.
He knows the secret.
But it was just basically reseating the system. So that was a horrible decision, and hence the reason they never went back to it. But it was. I understood what they were trying to do, but it was not a good idea. Some other classic games that got started. So we mentioned Ninja Gaiden.
Yeah. Well, the other one for me was Double Dragon 2.
Double Dragon, yeah.
Oh man, the first one was okay, but the second one was really fun. That was a fun one. That was one where you could throw them over your shoulder, and you could do all kinds of stuff. Take the elevators. You had the helicopter on that one thing. Yeah, that was. I mean, it was pretty simple. I mean, it wasn't like it was real deep or nothing. But it was cool as you could play with somebody else. You could kind of partner up with a friend and go through it. So it was the little buddy system of it. Added to the fun of it, because now you were a team, and if you had someone who was really good, you can kind of live off of them for a while as you went in there.
Yeah, you could. Mega Man.
Mega Man.
Mega Man blew up on the NES.
I played the first Mega Man, and I wasn't really hooked. And I think it was like, I can't remember if it was the third or the fourth that I was like, okay, now they know what they're doing on this game. And I think every single one of them was awesome from from 2 on. I never really got into the first one, but 2 on all the way to 10.
Yeah,
they were all. And what was amazing is, they came out with those pretty quick after one after another. And
it was like a similar formula for each game.
And so you look at like Super Mario, how much it changed. There was only 3 of them in the life of the NES, and you got 10 of them. And like you said, they didn't stray too far from the formula. They just like, okay, we're giving you more levels, we're giving you more bad guys,
more bosses.
But here you go. But that's what I liked about it. I liked that it was the same. I liked that I could continue. It was almost like it was the first game, but just better, and you could just kind of continue it on. And the play was the same, like they didn't introduce too much new things for the character. So it kind of helped you to hone your skills. So when you went into it, you were already kind of an expert. You were just now learning, okay, what's the new landscape that I have to beat, but you already knew how the character acted and what it could do. I thought that was really brilliant.
The story kind of interconnected then?
It really wasn't a story.
The story it was the same for every game. You had the 2 doctors who were against each other. You had Dr. Light and Dr. Wily. And Dr. Light built Mega Man. Dr. Wily built all the evil robots, and they were constantly clashing. And so you had to go, and there was a certain order for the Mega Man game. So there was a certain order there was an optimal order.
You gained like a tool from whatever the bad guy you beat. So you needed to beat him in a certain order, because then you'd get the tool that could beat the other bad. If you tried to beat the other bad guy without that tool, you'd lose.
Oh.
So you had to kind of figure out, who's got
unless
the tool.
You were really good.
Unless you're really good, yeah. But unless you kind of had to figure out what is the weapon that you get from the bad guy, and you got to get that one first. Then you can go.
Yeah. You beat the fire guy first, get his weapon, and use it against the ice guy, and then use that against the water guy or the leaf guy or whatever. So, and every game was the same. You just had to figure out the best order to tackle all the bosses, and then you defeat the scientist, Dr. Wily, at the end, and then he'd be back for the next game. Yeah. Actually, it's so funny because I have Mega Man 11, which came out. Which came out either last year or the year before. Maybe it was 2018. Maybe same principle, exact same thing. Same doctors.
Keep bumping them out for 10 more years.
Yeah. Well, it's like
they just took a break.
They did take a long break, but now it's I can't. What do you call it? The nostalgia of it. It's really coming back, and so I actually got that. I haven't beat it yet because I don't know who's the first person I have to destroy. But when I get a chance, I'll eventually go back to it. But another character, and this is Antonio, and you may know this already. So I'm sorry if I'm telling you stuff you already know, but Kid Icarus is a game that got started on NES too, and that's where Pit came from Kid Icarus.
Yeah, and Kid Icarus was one of the original. There was like a block of original games that came out when the NES came out, and Kid Icarus was one of the first ones. I never really got into it.
I didn't either. Ice Climbers too. There's another one.
Ice Climbers. Actually, I liked Ice Climbers. I never beat it, or I don't even know if you could beat it. But yeah, that was another one that, it's kind of one of those games that it was fun to play for a little bit, and then you're like, okay, let's see what other games are there.
Yeah. So would you say there's more enjoyable one-player games on the NES than there was on the Atari and things like that?
Oh yeah, I would say that. I mean, gosh, you're comparing game quality to, Atari and Intellivision and Coleco were fun because that's what we had. I think what stayed fun with them and probably still would be fun is like the arcade versions of the games. Those are still fun because it's just kind of a basic premise. But Nintendo would suck you in, and that was the difference. I think Nintendo sucks you in even emotionally because now you've got music. You've got music to the games. I can remember, when I was trying to beat Metroid, that dun, in the beginning, I dreamed that. I mean, I would dream that music because I played it so much. And so it's just a whole different level with NES. They really brought in between the graphics and between the music, and it's just 8-bit music. It's not like anything special, but it was enough, especially for a 8, 9, 10-year-old who's just starting to get emotional about stuff, to really start kind of tapping into that. I can remember beating Mario Brothers for the first, it's such a simple ending, but just being like emotional about it, because that was like the first game I ever beat, that was like that. And so it's a different level of entertainment than Atari and Intellivision. Those were fun, but purely just on a game level. This was like, oh no, you're like in something, you're doing so, and especially when you start talking to other guys who are playing at the same time as you, well, now you've got, kind of a group camaraderie about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what NES really added was that component. Because I mean, gosh, everybody would sit around watching each other play, and we'd be rooting for each other. And then at school, that's what you would talk about. How did you beat this level? What did you do here? Yeah,
I remember that. That's a big thing I remember. The social aspect. You would go to school and be like, all right, I'm at this part. How do you get past it? Because we didn't even, there were gaming magazines, but for whatever reason, we didn't have them. At least not during NES days.
Well, the first one was Nintendo Power. Yeah, that was Super Mario 2.
Okay.
That was the first time that we had anything that was close. And that was like they had a walkthrough for the first 3 levels.
Yeah.
So that was like the first anything like that,
And even then, I didn't subscribe to it, so it was just like rare if my parents would ever buy that. So you had to rely on going to school with no internet. You had to go to school and talk about it and discuss this. Like, all right, we need a game plan, people.
Well, I remember being at school and a friend telling me about in the second level where you jump up in Super Mario and get the green mushroom, And I was like, what? Yeah, there's a green mushroom there. No, where? And then he's like trying to describe it to me, and I'm picturing in my mind. I went home and I kept jumping until I found it, And I was
are you talking about the first game or the second?
Yeah, no, the first one.
Horse game, okay.
Yeah, and it was in this. I think it's been a while since I played Mario, but in the second level, 1, 2, where you jump and you hit the top, and then the green mushroom comes, and you've got to run and jump and catch it before it falls off the edge there, on the ramp. That was someone told me that. I had never known about it,
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, the bricks that are
on the very ceiling.
At the top, and you have to hit it. Yeah.
And then that was also kind of neat too. Just discovering, hey, I could walk on top of the game. You can climb on the top.
And that's where you got the warp zones to go to the end of the game.
That's the first warp game. Yeah, that's the first warp zone. And so again, that outside of the box thinking. You don't have to stick within the basic rules of the game. You can kind of if you're creative, you can get out of it. But that camaraderie I think was really neat. And again, with the having to be able to play 2 people, like there was a game, Ikari Warrior. Do you remember that game? And it was 2 guys, and you had guns. It was a game my parents would never let me play, but I played it in the arcades, and then they had it on Nintendo. And you could have 2 players go, and it was just basic. It was like a Rambo game. You were 2 Rambos, and you went and just a bunch of guys are trying to stop you from wherever you're going. They're shooting at you, and you got to shoot them and everything. But I can remember just the teamwork aspect of it. How you would get really close with whoever you're playing with because, I mean, all this stuff coming at you at once, and it's like you're handling a pressure situation together, you know. So they tapped into something with that, and I think it's carried through, and especially with Wii, now you got 4 people that could play. And like we have a game on the Wii, the Wipeout, the first one, and that is so fun to play. And then people will like kind of look at it like, and then they start playing it, and it's like it's fun, because you've seen the game or the show, right? The TV show Wipeout. Well, that's all it is, and you just run and bounce on the balls and you go on this stuff. But it's B can play it, adults can play it, everyone has fun. It's like everyone's on equal ground. It's not really hard to learn. But you all play together, and you can kind of throw balls at each other, and so it's just kind of a neat thing that Nintendo kind of tapped into.
I think it's interesting what you're saying about having your friends and having that camaraderie, or you kind of work together towards a goal and kind of get close that way. Because I think my experience playing video games at a certain point was that I had some friends where that's all we did, so much to the fact that we really didn't know each other. And we like became not friends after we stopped playing video games because there was nothing in common besides that one interest.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. I guess here's the caveat with that. During Nintendo time, NES time, kids were still outside playing. We still went out and played basketball. We still went out and played football. We still went, rode our bikes to the 7-Eleven. So this was just one aspect of that. I think eventually it got to where, like nowadays, I mean, especially, me, I have a business. I hire people. I hire these 20-year-olds, and they've never done any physical work. And so they work a full day and they're exhausted, and it's like because they just never had any. So I understand why you felt that way, because probably that was all the entertainment you guys did together.
Yeah.
Whereas our friends, we'd show up at our house. We may play a little bit of video games. We'd go outside, play basketball. We'd ride to the 7-Eleven, get some Slurpees. We'd come back. We'd go to the desert. We'd come back, play some video games again. It was like a full day thing. And so it's like we did a lot more stuff other than just video games. As much as we did play a lot of video games, don't get me wrong. But we had so many other things that we did as well. So
that's the same with me too. We did a lot of stuff. Video games was usually like we would play a little bit in the morning. Like if my cousins would come over and stay over, we would play in the morning a little bit. But then we'd go outside, and play outside. And then in the evening, once you had to come inside, then we just played games like all night. But my mom, she wouldn't let, and I think a lot of parents during that time were like that. She wouldn't let us stay inside and play all day. You could play for a little bit, but then it's like, all right, get up and go outside, and I lived across the street from my elementary school, and the playground was there. So we would go outside and do a lot of stuff. So she definitely helped keep it balanced.
That's not all I did, but some of my friends' parents, they would let us do that. And that's what we would do with them.
What else did you do, though? What else did you do, Antonio?
The normal stuff.
He can't remember. All he remembers is the games.
No, I had this friend who had a wash near his house, and so we'd go run around the Pantano wash. We came across a homeless guy one time. That was kind of scary, but
Okay.
We used to make a lot of videos.
That's pretty common in Tucson, I think.
Yeah, but as a kid, you're like, oh my God, what do we do? And we just started running, and then we're like, came across this whole like mine thing that has like water in it.
Are you sure you weren't playing a video game, Antonio?
I have video
Did you
evidence.
have a bomb in your hand? Did you have a bomb and you tried to pull it?
No, but yeah, that's funny. So I did do some things,
Yeah.
But yeah.
So yeah, overall, I mean, you can definitely tell. A lot of people. I think a lot of people forgot as far as the history of the NES and what it's brought. A lot of franchises came from the NES. Mm-hmm. I think Metal Gear got its start on NES. Maybe
Madden.
I'm looking at the back of the box too. Tecmo Bowl, Final Fantasy. All these games got their start. Dr. Mario. We talked about Castlevania a little bit. Excite Bike. All these games got their start on the NES, and a lot of companies got started around that time, like Square and Konami and all those games.
The thing about Nintendo too is there's a lot of like kind of one-off games that were really good. there was one game that I enjoy called The Adventures of Lolo. And I think they came out with a second, and they might even came out with a third. I think like one of those late ones, like in 2018, they came out with 3. But it was a really hard puzzle game. I mean, really, really hard. And but it was fun. It was really challenging. There was another one called what was it? Devil's Triangle. I can't remember, but we were like in a motorboat. And you had, guns on it, and you were like, it was like a race, but you could like shoot targets as you were running, and you got points. And I remember, we spent a lot of time on that one, and I don't remember who even made it. It was like you just never heard of it again. Yeah. And so you were talking earlier about the quality control. There were a lot of varieties, but most of the games were pretty decent. Most of them were, even if they weren't great, they were decent. There was no ETs in the bunch.
Right. Exactly.
So it did. Sometimes I would buy a game just because it was on sale and play it, and it turned out to be fun, and it's just, again, one of those no-name games you never heard from again, had no basis in anything else, just a one-off, but you had some good memories with it.
Yeah. One thing I was disappointed about, though, even as a kid, I remember, is that whenever I would look at the box art to a game, I would look at the box art and I'm like, oh, this looks really cool. But whenever I would put the game in, it looked nothing like the box art.
You got to check the pictures on the back, man.
But as
on the back.
Yeah, I know. But as a kid, I don't know. I had these great visions of how the game was going to look in my mind.
Sitting in a restaurant staring at a burger.
Nintendo,
yeah, right? Exactly.
Nintendo was bad, but Atari and Intellivision was the worst for that.
Well, yeah, I would imagine
there was, the art for the Intellivision and the Atari stuff had nothing to do with the game.
Yeah, that's how I felt the NES was. But in retrospect, it probably wasn't as bad. But I'd be looking at these games, I'm like, oh, this looks really cool, and get home and put it in. I'm like, wow, this doesn't look like how I imagined it.
Yeah.
And when you start getting into the SNES and N64, then it started getting better.
Yeah, the quality started getting better for sure.
Yeah.
The other thing too that I think the NES was disappointing in, there was a lot of games that were really fun on the computer that didn't quite translate to the NES. Like they had Lemmings. Like, I don't know if you ever played Lemmings on the computer, but it was fun. It was fun. Basically, it's a bunch of lemmings, and you had to build things to help them to reach their goal. And then they would just keep walking. If they fell off and they died, they would just keep going. So you had to just kind of make these things. And it was a lot of fun on the computer. But on the NES, it was really hard, and it was really clumsy. And it was hard to move the controller, because it was basically just a cursor that you would move with the cross pad, and then you would hit it to lay whatever. And it just didn't translate. Same thing with Lode Runner. Lode Runner was also a fun game on the computer, and it just didn't work on the NES. So there was kind of some crossover that they tried to make from successful games on the PCs. I just thought we enjoyed them on the PCs. We don't need them on the Nintendo. It didn't quite work like that.
Right.
The other ones that were not so fun too were like the game shows. They had like Jeopardy, and they had Wheel of Fortune. And I was like, why are you even doing that stuff? It was so dumb, but I guess
it was just to make money. It was a cash grab franchise. Actually, Wheel of Fortune wasn't bad, but the Jeopardy and all the other stuff, I couldn't deal with that.
I had Monopoly on there too. I think they had Monopoly NES, and I'm like,
oof, yeah.
Nah.
Now Tecmo Bowl, that was
fun. I love Tecmo Bowl.
Pretty fun. Yeah.
The other was Double Dribble.
Double Dribble.
The Konami sports games were awesome. Double Dribble, Blades of Steel.
Yes.
Man, I played. We had some heated contests with the Blades of Steel. Oh man! But
I specifically remember when you created your team, you could pick between the fat, medium, and skinny skaters and stuff, and so you would try to build up your team and balance it out between them. But man, I forgot about Blades of Steel.
Yeah, and then Double Dribble too with when you go up to do a layup, and then you could have the dunk. They had the little quick video image of the dunk. That was like, wow,
during that, exactly.
I had a buddy come down from California, and he was talking. We were just talking about Nintendo, and I pulled it out so we could play. And we played Double Dribble, and I forgot how competitive I got with that game, man. You know, I mean, we were both at each other's throat.
Yeah.
Both that, Blades of Steel, and then Dr. Mario. We played Dr. Mario, and we were like, no, how could you, you know? It was like funny. It's like I was back to being a 10-year-old again. Playing.
By the way, there was this game, and I think this might have been SNES. But do you remember this basketball game called Arch Rivals?
No, well, they had it both. They had it for NES, NES, and SNES. I have Arch Rivals on NES.
Okay,
it's not as good. The SNES version is much better.
Is the one that's the one where you punch people and take the ball, right?
Yeah, you can punch people and take the ball.
Yeah, you would punch them and steal the ball from them. There was no rules to this game.
Of course, the arcade version was the best. The arcade version was awesome, but the SNES version came pretty close to the arcade version, and it was a lot easier to control. The SNES or the NES version, the controlling was a little off, so it wasn't as fun because like you'd punch and you'd miss, and it was a little more clunky. But once the SNES was a lot more fun to play. Yeah,
I got to see if I can find a clip.
And then
watch a clip of that.
Super Nintendo had the NBA Jam.
NBA Jam, yep.
That was fun, man.
That was the game that really blew up.
Yeah,
it really blew up.
Totally blew up. Yep. It was right around that time. Mortal Kombat and NBA Jam, and Arch Rivals. Those are all kind of like the arcade games that were really big and popular about that early 90s.
And they put in you can put other characters into the game. Well, they started introducing new characters into the game, and so I remember there was one point where like you could play as Bill Clinton and Hillary, I think.
What? I'm sure. Yeah, you could. Yeah, you could bring in other characters.
They brought in other characters, so
celebrities and stuff. Yeah,
they put celebrities in NBA Jam.
That's funny.
Yeah, I'm not crazy. I'm not making.
No. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, for sure.
But I have to look.
I'm not going to make any Bill Clinton jokes. I'm just.
This was pre Monica.
Yeah.
So
he was still playing the saxophone, right?
Yeah, exactly. Let me see. I'm trying to remember NBA Jam hidden characters. Let me see who was in that game.
That's funny.
So John Elway, Hillary Clinton, George Clinton, Prince Charles. Who else?
And these are all just like pixelated, so it's like
yeah. Well, you could tell with some characters like Bill Clinton.
But what does it say? What system that was for? Because I don't think the first NBA Jam we were able to do that.
I don't think the first one, but they released several.
Was it 64 or was this Nintendo?
No,
64?
this was Super NES for sure.
Oh,
look. See, this was Bill and Hillary Clinton.
Wow.
Who else did they add? This is a newer version, obviously with Bush and Cheney. I'm trying to think who else was the Grim Reaper. No, that's not real. I don't think that's real. I think they added Mortal Kombat characters at some point. Yeah, they added Mortal Kombat characters, I think. Oh man, yeah, it was crazy.
That's funny.
Oh yeah, I remember Will Smith and Jazzy Jeff.
Jazzy Jeff
got put into it. Trying to see who else. Yeah, it was quite a mashup though. They added a lot of people into the game. Yeah, but I remember having to try to figure out like who the hidden characters were in that. So
interesting.
Brings back funny memories.
Well, thanks again, Gabe. Appreciate it.
Anytime you guys want to talk about video games, because we still have computer PC video games, and then we have the actual arcade video games too that we could talk about. So
we're down,
and there's still SNES, N64.
Yeah, we got. Now SNES. I can talk a little bit, but and 64. By that time, I was like GoldenEye, and that was pretty much all I played. I really hadn't.
Well, that's all you needed to know.
Yeah,
like you were saying, getting emotional beating Mario. I felt that when I beat Mario 64.
Yeah,
like you beat.
Well, that was a hard game. I never beat that one. That was a hard game.
Yeah, once you beat the final Bowser, like there's this whole cutscene with like. going back on the level. It like shows the levels you beat, and there's like all this music, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then at the end, it's like, thank you for playing my game. There's a cake, and normally now the games go back to the title menu. This one just stayed there. So I would just like sit there and just stare at it. I'm like, wow, what do I do with my life?
Yeah.
I had a lot of those moments. I was like, oh, I beat the game. What do I do now?
Well, here's the worst one is when I was 18 or 18. Yeah, I was 18. I got sick. Like
so really last year?
Cold. Yeah. I got sick with a really bad cold. And so I was like, I'm going to beat this game and I'm going to get all 120 stars. And so I beat it. I wasted a whole day doing it. At the end, after you get 120 stars, the cannon that's in the
courtyard.
When the what is it?
Is it courtyard?
Yeah, the courtyard of the castle. It opens up and you can shoot yourself on top of the castle. And you do that, and Yoshi's there, and you talk to him, and it's like he's like, "Oh wow, it's so cool! You got 120 stars. Thank you so much. Keep having fun playing this game." He gives you 100 lives, and he jumps off the castle, and that's all you get.
That's it.
Which at that point you don't even
need 100 lives anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah. That was at my end of my love of video games, and then it got really as a couple years ago. So,
man, I'm trying to remember there's some disappointing endings too to games, but I can't think of any right now. I remember thinking, that's it.
Yeah, they didn't get too crazy with endings, I don't think, until you start getting into the 64 era. I mean, SNES had a few that were pretty decent. Like, for example, the ending for Metroids are always iconic.
Yeah.
But even then, it wasn't much of a story. It was just the way they did the final boss fights. Because like in Super Metroid, for example, you fight Mother Brain. It's almost a mirror of how you fought her in the original. But then she comes out of the ground, and then there's a full body and this awesome music.
Oh, are you serious? I've never beat the Super Metroid.
Oh, sorry. Well, I just spoiled.
That's all right. No, I'm not going to play it. So
okay, it's on Switch if you wanna get it on Switch. Or I can let you borrow my
I might even have the cartridge. I mean, I buy a bunch of cartridges that I never get a chance to play. Because I have the Super Nintendo, the old school one. So I might have the Super Metroid cartridge. I'll have to check. I have a million NES stuff. I have a few Atari and televisions, and I have a few Super Nintendos. I'll have to check.
Yeah, so we have a lot. There's still a lot left to go. But that was just the NES, and
I'll write these down. What are the other ones you were saying? You said you had the SNES, right?
Mm-hmm.
You said computer games.
Yeah,
because I want to
PC.
This I was talking to some kid about Oregon Trail, and he didn't know what it was.
Yeah, dude. Oh, you know what? I'll have to send you. I have a little plastic thing that I got at Target that they sold limited edition. It's the whole Oregon Trail game on it, and it's just the screen. It's just the game. It's so cool.
Okay,
you know what
we're
it taught me?
We're going to talk about that.
You know what it taught me?
Dysentery.
Yeah,
it taught me
dysentery.
It taught me how short our attention spans are now, because that game is long. It's a long game.
I always died.
I did too.
I don't think I ever finished it either. Yeah.
But when I was playing it was on computers at school, because we had like a computer class for like an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know what I was just trying to like shoot ducks or something.
Yeah, we had way more attention as kids back then than we do now, because it would never fly today. Because I played it and I tried to get my daughter to play it, and she was done within the. She's like, "This is all happens." Yeah. All right, I'm done.
Look, you can go fishing now.
Look, you can hunt. You can hunt. Where are you hunting? Well, no, you just push the button and it tells you you're hunting, and it tells you what you might have or might not have killed.
Oh, but there was a version of it on.
Yeah, where you see the little
where you could, and you have to try to aim and then what I always hated was that you would always like kill you get 1,000 pounds of meat, but you can only carry like 200 back to the wagon, and I'm like, are you serious? And like whenever you try to,
we'll save the Oregon Trail stories.
Okay, sorry. I'm getting carried away.
I get triggered by that game too.
Oh, I know. Yeah. And trying to cross water.
Why are these wagon wheels breaking?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
They know how to make wagon wheels?
And I don't even think I really knew how to read when I was playing that game, because I was like, Decenter.
most of those diseases are not even common anymore, but you would die of stuff that was no one dies of today. But yeah,
I'd hate to see the 2020 version of Oregon Trail. It's like you going to the store.
No.
It's
Right.
like, oh no, someone called me.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Not wearing a mask.
Yeah, the 2020 version would definitely be different.
You have to go to Home Depot.
No. And for quick question for PC games, because I did play PC games, but I don't think I played a lot of I don't know if I played the mainstream PC games growing up, but like I played a lot of games that were made by Sierra. Did you ever play any of the Sierra games, like the Space Quest and King's Quest and what was the other one?
The PCs were a lot more like what's the term? Kind of like choose your own adventure, type things where you had a lot more, or like role playing games,
right?
Dungeons and Dragons type style where you had a lot more freedom. So it was like a whole different style of gaming. Now they did have the arcade games there, but they weren't as popular because it's easier to play on a console because you had the actual things, the actual controllers that were easier to play, and you could get controllers for the PC. There was a lot of what the PC was really good for was for like space games that were close to flight simulators. So because they had like these real realistic joysticks. You would be like, they had some really cool Star Wars games on there where you flew in a TIE fighter. And you couldn't, the PC was a lot more powerful than the consoles. So you had a lot more detail in it. And I remember there was a flight simulator game that was, it was really hard. It was really, you learned a lot about being a pilot with it.
Oh yeah. Microsoft, they still make those games.
They still do.
Flight simulators. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. So yeah, we can talk about those later.
Okay.
Yeah. And wasn't there a movie called like War Games or something that was based off PC games?
Yeah, War Games was not. War Games was in, I think, 1982. So it really wasn't. It was more just the idea of. It was back when computers were still like mysterious to people. Like, you had a room full of computers, and that's how they, were able to turn lights on and stuff. That's what they needed back then. So War Games was all about like, what if this computer came alive, and now you had to, it was running a program that was written for it, and now you had to convince it to change, yeah. It was okay. It's totally dated. If you watched it now, back then it was really high tense, and now it's just like, oh, they're playing tic-tac-toe. Okay. That's how the movie ends. All right.
For those who haven't seen it, that's how it ends. Well, Gabe, thanks again.
Hey, anytime, guys. It was fun.
And we'll again look forward to even more talks about video games, the history behind them, and the things that we enjoy about them.
Got it.
So, this has been Two Crazy Scoops Podcast with your hosts, Ao and Antino. Thanks for staying tuned and enjoy the next upcoming episodes where we talk about even more stuff, the history of stuff, and if it's wrong, don't write me and tell me about it, please.